to dive into anything? Do you want to wait a few minutes for Mike or anyone else to pop on?
Did he say he would just be a few minutes, or?
He said at an appointment we'll be online as soon as I can for this meeting.
Okay. If he's not here in a couple minutes, then do I just call us to order and have the introducing statement read?
Okay, yeah, we'll wait a couple minutes.
Okay, yeah, let's give it 2 minutes, and if he doesn't make it, then we can at least get started and he can join in.
Sounds good. Okay. All right, so we're not quite at quorum, and I know, oh, there's Mike coming on.
Sorry, my physical started at 3 and lasted until 4:08. So.
I made it as clear as I could.
Oh, we are.
Participants.
So Mike, we are not at quorum, so if you'd like, we're welcome to kind of leave the minutes for now, and we could do the rest of the agenda and see if we reach quorum at any time in the meeting.
I concur.
Okay. All right, should we?
So then we have 2 items to talk about for those of us who are in attendance. We want to start with the central station.
We haven't yet kicked it to Jared to let him do the intro and roll call.
Oh,
so
perfect. Sorry.
There, and then we'll jump in.
Sorry. Brains around. Go ahead and introduce us, Jared, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Jared Allen, Administrative Technician, Lawrence Transit. With me here is Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. He will work alongside Mike Wazakowski to facilitate the meeting's proceedings. The meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the city's YouTube channel and public access cable channel 25. During the meeting, when you are not participating, please mute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon down on the lower left-hand side of the Zoom menu. In some cases, we may mute or unmute people as needed to minimize distractions during the meeting. Please remember to state your name and title for the benefit of those listening remotely. If you are participating by phone, you can click *6 to unmute your phone. And now I will do roll call. Lance Fay.
Here.
Austin Stifler.
It sounds like not present.
Mike Wazakowski.
I'm present.
Foster Spicinger.
Do not see their name on the attendee list.
Alan Ackland.
Here.
Gregory Critchlow.
I do not see them on participant list right now.
Bill Wilson,
Same answer.
August Rudisell,
Same answer.
Freddie Gitt,
Same answer. And if that's it, that leaves us with 3, which is definitely short of a quorum. So this is not an official meeting, which means we can't vote, but we can still address agenda items as we see fit, up to the point of making an actual motion to issue guidance or whatnot. So first thing first, is there anyone in the room for public comment physically?
Nobody in the room.
Okay. And there are a couple of names that I do not necessarily recognize on the participant list. If any of them want to speak now, this is the opportunity.
I'll be introducing Mark Price here in just a minute. He's
okay. That was the name I didn't recognize. So that kind of says no, there's no public comment then. And the next item on the agenda would be to review and approve the minutes, but we cannot do that as we are not in an official meeting. So I believe then that we can progress with regular agenda items, starting with Central Station updates.
Right. And Mike, I might ask if I could do Mark Price's introduction now, just in case he needs to hop on.
That works for me.
I wanted, if Mark could turn video on, I just wanted to introduce Mark Price, new budget analyst working with our transit group. He has been with the Municipal Services and Operations group as a finance employee, and there's some transition time where he's working for both of those groups, but will soon be full-time with us, and just wanted to introduce him here to you all, since he's a newer team member on our team.
Hello, as Adam mentioned, I'm Mark Price. He also stole the rest of my lines, but I look forward to working with all of you.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Nice to meet you.
All right, so I'm happy to jump back to the Central Station if that works for you.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Right, so I have an update for you all regarding the Central Station project. Screen going here. Okay, so you'll notice one change to presentations. I am trying to frame everything in a similar way that we do a lot of the strategic plan updates to the City Commission. We've changed some formatting to more closely connect the work we're doing with the strategic plan. So you'll see some of that alignment just in the layout of future presentations about projects. So we are in the connected city outcome area for the most part, as where a lot of transit work lives. There are a couple of exceptions to that. Well, trouble with slides advancing. So the connected city outcome area, this information is provided each time we talk through any work being done in this outcome area. So this just gives you an idea of what types of things live in that part of the strategic plan. So it's all about infrastructure, facilities, mobility, moving people throughout Lawrence, as well as information and IT, and investments in these areas help contribute to the well-being of people in Lawrence. There are 14 progress indicators, performance indicators that the city measures to track progress on this outcome area. There are a number of these that transit tries to move the needle on in the direction we want things to go, whether that's increasing or decreasing certain trends. In the Central Station project, I've highlighted the 3 performance indicators that are most impacted by our work on this project. So the first of those being the percent of residents satisfied or very satisfied with their transportation experience. Also the percent of trips not taken in automobiles, and public infrastructure projects that account for climate adaptation. There's a little more info. I wrote some justification as to how we think this project influences those 3 performance indicators. So, of course, improving the rider experience, we think will improve people's satisfaction with our services. More purposeful infrastructure such as this makes the transit system more attractive. So we do believe it'll have some impact on ridership and people's willingness to use the bus in Lawrence. And then this project accounted for climate in a number of different ways through its process. A few of those primary ways were use of an existing building instead of full demolition and reconstruction. There will be solar on the canopy to the bus platform. And through the City Commission's guidance, we're not including irrigation. So we'll be establishing drought-tolerant plants without a lot of turf that would need mowed and watered to stay alive. I wanted to frame this project in the context of our work plan this year. So I've highlighted in orange a few of those projects that this project touches. So obviously the construction of Central Station, but this project is also very closely aligned with route redesign. Once this is completed, we'll be able to implement the next phase of route changes in August. There are legal agreements to work through for the K10 connector to come to this station, and our travel training program, which is going very well. More people we expect to desire training on how to use new routes and kind of operate through Central Station with new routes there. Give you a big picture look at the timeline, which we're still on track for. These are timelines that were laid out in the contract with our contractor that was selected for the construction work. So that construction officially started January 23rd. We expect substantial completion of the site to be done by the end of June. So that would be concrete work that would allow us to drive vehicles on and off the site. There are a few additional months allowed for the building to have substantial completion. So everything within the facility itself, offices, restrooms, break rooms, all of the details required in the rehab of the building by the end of September. And then final completion for everything to be wrapped up. This would include all things like landscaping and any other touch-up type details completed by the end of October. So this timeline allows us to be fully ready to operate for August 1st route changes. We may be dealing with some challenges around the building not being fully complete for a couple of months into the fall, but should be able to navigate that so long as we can move buses on and off the site. A few other details about the project, just to give you an idea kind of what type of things we're working through. There's a whole section of the project called Finishes, Furnishings, and Equipment. These are pieces of the project that the city's responsible for navigating as opposed to the construction contractor. So our staff is the one who has to define specific details about what our lobby seating looks like. There's graphics out on bus, like windscreens on the platform. There's a lot of digital infrastructure. So there's interactive kiosks where people will be able to plan their trips or see detour information or other city information, real-time signage for when buses will arrive, as well as the public art component of the project. All of those pieces, those kind of finishing pieces, are in the hands of our staff to work through procurement and get those things included in the project. I referenced the coordination with K10. We are also coordinating with Greyhound. Those are two regional services that will be coordinating, and there is planned bus bay space for them to service Central Station. So people will be able to connect directly from local routes to Johnson County Community College on the K10 connector and other Johnson County routes that are served from there, and Greyhound also from Central Station. So I jotted down a few of the topics that we have to work through in both those cases. There are legal documents, usually MOUs, for how that service will operate, what sort of access people will have, and different things. There's, of course, the logistics of routing and scheduling, start and end dates for their services, signage to direct people, wayfinding to get to these certain stops, and then any other information that we can integrate either digitally on the digital signage we'll have or at our customer service window. Included some site photos. There are more of these coming in pretty much weekly. So this isn't a whole lot for you, but wanted to give you a little sense of how things are looking. So these two pictures are from early to mid-February inside the building. So contractors removed everything except for concrete slab, steel supports, and you see some of the roof and walls. Those will also get refurbished with new material. But give you a sense of the scale inside that we have to work with. And then a couple outdoor photos. These are towards the end of February. So a lot's changed since then. If you have a chance to drive or walk by the site, you'll see more hill work being done to regrade the hill in a way that flattens things out for bus service. But a couple of photos here of how they've constructed some ramps to be removing dirt from the hillside. Some of that will be able to be repurposed to fill down lower. Some of it has to just be hauled offsite because it's not suitable for that subgrade material. But give you a sense of how that hill is shaping up. And that's really the content I have for you for the update on Central Station. I'm happy to answer any questions. We do try to keep the project website as up to date as possible on what our next steps are and if there's any changes in timeline or anything else. So I'd encourage you to check into that if you're interested, but of course, happy to answer any questions anybody has now.
I'll open it to the floor, which is admittedly small one. Lance, Alan, do you guys have any questions, comments, concerns before we start? Or before I go?
Yeah, this is Alan Ackland, PTAC member. I noticed they're going to leave that large tree there. Are they taking any special precautions during constructions to make sure that the construction process to make sure they don't damage that tree?
Yeah, it's a good question. So this is the large one you're talking about.
Yeah.
They're at our kickoff meeting with the contractor, and then in subsequent ones talked about. So what they're doing is they've outlined a fence line at the drip line. So the farthest branches that extend out straight down to the ground from that, they are trying to not disturb as much as possible. And that's the guidance from our horticulture team on making sure we keep that tree. That tree is very important to cooling of the building. It'll provide a lot of shade on the west side of the building where we have some larger windows. So that tree is important for a couple of different reasons, some very practical to energy costs and heating and that sort of thing.
And it's not an ash tree.
It is not. It's a big oak. Yeah.
Thank you.
No ash borer on that one.
Anything else, Alan or Lance? Okay. only question I really had from looking at this was about the timeline, Adam, that we had originally been envisioning that this would be open before the start of the 2023 semester. And this timeline very clearly shows we're not going to meet that. So what's the, how does this impact when we're going to do rerouting and publishing of a new schedule for the next school year?
Yeah. So even though we may not be there on the building side of things, we do plan to change routes at the beginning of that semester. It was the critical path for us was making sure that the site was substantially complete before that August 1st date so that people could safely transfer between buses and use the platform. So it is possible that the building or portions of the building aren't able to be used starting right away in August. But that would not delay us changing routes at the typical time that we do in August. So I think, and we're still very early as the contractor gets into this. I think early on they had some confidence that they could beat the substantial completion date for the building. Of course, a number of things can impact that along any construction process with supply chain and weather and anything else. But I think we've got some hope that maybe that's a little earlier than the end of September. Of course, we would prioritize the work as much as possible in the building to be the public facing portions. So people able to enter for restrooms and customer service and that type of thing. If staff offices aren't done until October, that is not a problem for the operations that we need. So it'll be a little bit of a dance. Of course, in a perfect world, everything would be completely wrapped up. But we're pushing kind of as fast as we can on this site.
Okay, thank you for that. I mean, personally, I'm definitely concerned about that, but public facing stuff, as long as you're confident that the routes can still run through the new location and what public stuff inside of the building that people will want to use once routes start going to the site will be feasible, then I'm okay with it.
Yeah, and we'll certainly, we'll be communicating with this group and publicly a lot as we get into the summer and are starting to have a picture of how things are going to shape up. There will be a lot of prep work and outreach for how that transition is going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I do see one member of the public on the line. JT, do you have any comments, questions, or concerns about this? I will take that as a no. Margaret, I assume you don't have anything, or you would have chipped in by now.
Well, I thought I'd wait, but I have.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead now.
Been driving by it on occasion, and I think it's incredibly exciting. So it's a lot of fun to watch it all spring out of the ground, as it were. And my mom and stepdad also have been enjoying going by and looking at what's happening as they go through their daily lives. So it's really gratifying, I think. And I think Adam will agree, to see something that we've been trying to do for so long finally actually happening.
I will admit, I too, when I drive by, grin every time I see new marks of progress on the site. So I'm very happy. That said, sounds like we have exhausted comments, questions, and concerns about this. So let's talk about the Fare Free program then.
Just mention one comment as I get out of this screen. We do have a coming soon sign that will be installed along Bob Billings with a link to Lawrence Transit's website, the project website for Central Station, for people who may not know what construction is happening there. Of course, it's been pretty publicized, but we'll get the sign out there so that if people are in the area, they know what's on the way.
Nice. Would you consider putting a QR code on that so that people can just pull out their camera and jump to it instead of having to type in the URL?
That is a good idea. Yeah, we've got time for that. So appreciate the thought. Okay. So I will jump into Fare Free. Okay, so again, you'll notice the arrangement of these slide decks. I won't spend as much time on a couple of the recurring slides. So again, the stock slide of what we are looking at for Connected City, all of the full performance indicators that are measured to measure how we are achieving the outcome of Connected City. In the case of the Fare Free pilot program, there are 3 measures as well that are impacted by this work. So again, resident satisfaction with transit. There is a cost per fixed route passenger metric. So our fixed route service is, we have a scheduled number of hours, so it's a relatively fixed cost for the year. As ridership goes up, cost per passenger comes down. So that one has a chance to be impacted. And then the percent of trips not taken in an automobile. I maybe alluded to some of that explanation already, so I won't spend extra time on this slide, but some discussion around how we think this Fare Free program will impact each of these 3 performance measures. Looking at our work plan, we have evaluation activities planned for the program, as well as, again, touching with the travel training program. As more people are riding, as new riders are riding, we've certainly had more people reaching out to us, both individuals and groups, for training on how to use the bus system now that it's free, how to use certain routes, and that's been going pretty well. So at a later date, we'll probably deserve a deeper discussion on travel training as we get into that more, because that's been a really positive new program for us that Andy Lynch, our staff, has been doing a great job at. So at some point we'll come back to this group with some more detail. Timeline on this program. So we've committed to providing quarterly reports on how it is going. So what you'll see today is kind of the development or very early development of our first report. We do not have a whole lot of information for you, but we're trying to provide something in anticipation of middle of next month having kind of a better full snapshot of what January, February, March looked like in regards to Fare Free. So you see the first quarterly report mid-April, another quarterly report mid-July. With the third quarterly report in October, that's when we'll be taking a very hard look at program extension, or if there is a need to bring back fares. So with this group, there will be a discussion around how the budget is looking and funding availability for that to continue. If we were struggling to have appropriate funding to maintain Fare Free service, what we'd be talking through with this group is either bringing back fares in some fashion or maintaining Fare Free while looking at cuts to service in order to afford it. So those are some of the things to have early on your radar. We're 6 months away from that discussion, 7 months away from that discussion, but that will be coming later in the year as we look at Fare Free and its future. Okay. If you have these charts on your computers at home, this will be easier to zoom in on. So I apologize for the small data that you're looking at here. I can zoom in a little. The big picture takeaway, there's 2 slides here with route by route ridership information. There's on each chart, there's information that goes back to 2019. So every year from 2019 through today, monthly ridership. And we're interested on a route by route basis, which routes are exceeding pre-COVID numbers. And, as a measure of how we're doing compared to how routes were performing before the pandemic. This first slide that we're looking at are the higher performing routes. So routes 6, 7, 9, and 10 are all exceeding pre-COVID numbers, in some cases pretty dramatically, in cases of routes 6 and 7 in particular. Route 9 is an interesting one. It's exceeding 2020 January numbers, which was pre-COVID, but not yet above 2019 numbers there. So I've not consolidated February numbers for you all so that we can see that trend. I said there will be better info in that first official quarterly report, but wanted to give you some idea that there are a handful of routes that are doing quite well ridership-wise as we look back towards how service was before the pandemic. And I can come back to this slide if we have more questions on that. I'll give an overview of the next slide first, and happy to zero in on any route if someone has questions. So we've got a lot of info here. You've got 8 routes on the screen, 5 years worth of data. So it's a lot of information to pack, but there's a lot of similarities in the remainder of the city and coordinated routes. Almost all of these routes are exceeding the last 2 years of ridership by pretty healthy amounts, but are not yet pushing past 2019, 2020 numbers. We're not quite pushing past the pre-COVID ridership levels. I'll point out that Route 11 is a little bit of an interesting one. There were, more significant changes to that route in the first phase of route redesign, and in the way that route got structured, be coordinated with Route 12. One thing that I think is notable there is that Route 38 has picked up service to the reserve, which is a pretty healthy ridership stop that Route 11 used to pick up at. So that may have an impact on that route kind of being where it's at. I'll highlight that there is some coordination ongoing with Kitty Urban Planning class is helping us do some additional survey work of both riders and drivers on fare-free transit experience. So we're interested in learning from riders if they are riding more often than they did before. They are riding to different places or using new routes than they did before. Learning if we are mostly seeing people who are already riders, or if we are interacting with some newer riders to the system. So they're modeling their survey work off of similar surveys that were done in Kansas City after a year or more of fare-free service. So we should get some good qualitative data from that and some rider stories to understand what people's experiences are. Same with drivers. I think I'll probably leave that about there and answer any questions. Yeah, we're at the end of the slide here. So happy to go back to any specific chart or anything else that we talked through. Like I said, this is a pretty slim presentation, but wanted to give you some indication of how fare-free was looking after we've got a month of data in here. And we'll certainly try to beef that up more. I see, Margareta, do you have something before we kick it over to?
Yes, I wanted to add 3 comments about how looking at the data might be helpful. It's important to note that Route 27 is on the KU schedule, and so where it drops down to 0 and has really low numbers in August, December, January, and May, that is because of it not operating when classes aren't in session. So where you see that run down to the 0 line at the beginning and end of the year and in the middle, that's one thing. And that is also true in routes 11 and 12/29. the ridership changes pretty dramatically when classes aren't in session. And so that accounts for that hilly bit in the middle on those. And the other thing I was going to comment is that when KU went fare free, we experienced over the course of the year almost 100% ridership increase, which I don't think that Lawrence Transit will experience. But our consultants at the time said we should expect about a 20% jump. And changing in January, it's a bit of a slow start. I think that you'll see these numbers climb as the year goes on. It's my suspicion anyway.
Thanks, Margaretta. Alan, Lance, do you guys have anything you want to ask or comment on regarding this information?
Lance Fay, Vice Chair. I definitely, as a rider, am seeing more people on the bus consistently on the routes that I ride. And I've actually kind of wondered if Route 7 in particular, since it serves both Lawrence High and Central, if they've had maybe been so busy they couldn't pick up more riders a couple times. That's what I'm hearing from one of my kids. So I'm definitely seeing an increase in ridership.
Yeah, we'll follow up on that. It's something we definitely would be concerned about. Of course, fixed route is tricky if you reach capacity, which we didn't tend to anticipate, but we'll follow up and see if we can learn more about that Route 7 LHS experience. Is that where you heard that, Lance?
My daughter has complained of them not stopping near Central on that after school round, and that would be right after school gets out,
right,
during the day, and they go by both LHS and Central on their route coming inbound. I think they also serve a grade school as well.
Yes, that's a school-focused route. It hits Broken Arrow Elementary.
So I think that, yeah, so like that route right after school, like you can see the 6 get really full right when Free State gets out of high school as well, but the 7, I've overheard complaints of it not stopping at Central because they're so full.
There are actually 5 schools along that route if you count Cordley and South Billy Mills too.
Thanks for that conversation. Alan, do you have anything you want to question?
No.
Okay, thank you. Lance, were you done? Don't want to catch up. Okay. For the most part, I'm pleased with these numbers. I mean, I'm not surprised that some of our routes are not showing the evidence that fare free is improving at this time, because a lot of January was the period where we were out of school session for KU. So a big chunk of ridership was not necessarily there. And if I recall correctly, there were a couple cold snaps that prevented us from being able to operate buses. And so that can have an impact as well. But the 4 routes that you showed on slide 8 that have increased ridership up, basically exceeding what we had pre-COVID, are really exciting for me to see, in my opinion. I look forward to seeing what happens with the first full quarter of information.
And one thing I didn't mention in the slides, but should have, is that we are keeping a close eye as well on paratransit demand. That is a service that we must rise to meet the demand that comes to us. We have to serve people equitably. So that is an area where we could have increased cost and strain on the system if we need more drivers and vehicles out at different times to serve people an appropriate amount of time. So we're tracking that data as well. Both people who are already registered users, are they riding more? And are we seeing more applications for use of that service? So that'll be something to keep an eye on at each of the quarters.
Lance Fay, Vice Chair, I had a question about paratransit. Is there an official policy on limits per trips per day currently in place on paratransit?
I want to confidently say no. I'm 95% say no. There's not a limit on the number of trips per day.
Okay.
If you're eligible for the service, you can utilize the service.
Or have there been staffing shortages that have caused them to not be able to serve as much as they want? I've heard from one person that was told that they could only do one trip a day, and it's just something I heard, so I don't know, but I'm curious if there's been a problem with that.
Yeah, that would not be the case. We do get, as part of our monthly oversight of the service provider, we see all information related to paratransit and Nightline trip refusals and denials. So in some cases, particularly at the busiest morning and afternoon peak periods, it can be difficult to accommodate, or we're not able to accommodate the exact time people want to travel. So there's a negotiation that happens between the writer and our admin staff who help reserve trips. And so in many cases, we ask people to travel, 15 minutes earlier, 15 minutes later than they're asking for to accommodate the vehicles that are on the street. So there are limits, and there are percentages of denials that we have. They're very low. And if they rise over certain percentages, we're responsible to the federal government on why we're not accommodating those trips. So there is a limit there and a breaking point, but we haven't yet seen that show up in the data, I would say.
With that public comment, JT, you have your hand up. You have the floor.
Thank you for this data. It's very nicely presented and really nice to see.
Thanks, JT. Unless somebody else has another comment, question, or concern, I think we're done with this topic. So then the rest of the time that we have right now is for PTAC items and or other staff member items. Which Alan, Lance, do you have anything that you want to bring up that we didn't talk about today?
I don't have anything.
The only thing that has come to my mind, it was briefly talked about today, as we get close to starting our route changes, having people that can help with training and education about the transit system and the changes going on. I'd maybe like to learn more about that and know how we're going to handle that in terms of kind of people physically able to help, where I might be able to fit in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we'll need to dedicate more than one meeting to talking about the topic. I don't think we need to spend the whole meeting talking about the topic, but we likely should start talking about it in at minimum May, but potentially April as well. So there's kind of a ramp up, what I would recommend.
Yeah. I don't have anything else that I want to chip in, so I guess that changes to staff items. Adam or Jared, do you have anything that you want to bring up that wasn't on the agenda?
Nothing else from us today.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry that we didn't have a quorum and this wasn't an official meeting, but we will be in session on April 10th. Hopefully we will have enough people to have a quorum this time. So I look forward to, one question seeing that date. You mentioned the April 15th for the next fare free, full quarter update. Does that mean that we aren't going to meet that with this timing?
I should
have. Is there any way that we could pull it ahead a week?
Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, I'll have a very close to finished draft by that meeting time. So
Okay.
It might
That's fair.
98% draft or something, but we'll have something for you.
Okay. Well, with that, we're adjourned then. Thank you for attending, everyone.
Be safe.
Mhm.